While the federal government has no taxes on tips and other gratuities, a state lawmaker here in Illinois is looking to conform that aspect of payroll into state tax code. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us for the program here with the Center Square. You can get emailed the headlines daily. Go to thecentersquare.com, sign up for the newsletter, and stay plugged in. All right, so last year, big conversation. It was even a campaign pledge from both of the candidates in 2024 to have no taxes on tips. President Donald Trump, when he was running, he announced that policy and talked about it at every campaign rally. Also, no tax on overtime, for instance. But when they did ultimately, after the election, and Trump gets elected, and all the conversation in Congress, they put together that one big, beautiful bill. It had provisions in there about no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime as well, and also some Social Security provisions for elderly residents to not have to pay certain types of taxes. So that's the federal policy. A lot of states automatically conform with the federal policy so that their federal tax code reflects the taxes in the federal income tax reports. So that means on your federal taxes, if you're a server, if you wait tables, if you get tips of any kind, gratuity, and you have to declare that on your income tax, then in the federal income tax, you're going to get a tax credit. You're going to get, you're not going to have to pay there's no tax on tips up to a certain threshold. And so the federal government has that. States typically conform with that. Illinois did not. They did do a decoupling on a whole bunch of other provisions, but ultimately they just didn't conform to the state, to the federal tax code when it comes to gratuity or the overtime. So Illinois, as it is right now, you're not going to be taxed for your federal income tax when it comes to gratuity, but on the state income tax, you're still going to be taxed on that gratuity. State Representative Anthony DeLuca, Chicago Heights Democrat, he says that it's time to get that policy enacted in the state of Illinois because, well, it's popular policy and people want it.
Open both President Trump and former Vice President Kamala Harris. Well, if everyone remembers, during the presidential campaign of 2024, it was out there in the open, both President Trump and former Vice President Kamala Harris. They both talked about this issue on the campaign trail. It was a popular issue. It was a bipartisan issue, but Illinois has not enacted it. So I filed House Bill 4329, which would allow the state of Illinois, it would be the vehicle to allow the state of Illinois to take advantage of this deduction on gratuities.
Now, DeLuca is obviously a Democrat from Chicago Heights, and we heard last week Illinois House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch say that for any policy to advance, he needs 60 Democrats, not any of the Republicans. He didn't consider the Republicans. He wants unity amongst Democrats to advance legislation. So if DeLuca was able to get, 22 Democrats to sign up and all of the Republicans to sign up, he'd have more than the threshold needed to pass it. But will the bill get called? Speaker indicating that a bill won't get called unless it's got 60 guaranteed Democrat votes. Doesn't care about the Republicans. Interesting that he said that. So I asked DeLuca, is he going to be able to get 60 Democrats on board to support this measure?
Well, we've been talking a lot about affordability issues, and you mentioned the speaker, and I know that the speaker gave a speech last week where he talked about affordability issues being the theme of this upcoming legislative session. So several of the bills that I filed, we've talked about a couple of them in the past, about credit card transparency, government credit card transparency. We talked about banning guaranteed income programs, bills that I filed that are good for property taxpayers, good for affordability issues. This is another one of those issues. This keeps more money in people's pockets and helps them deal with the affordability issues that are out there. So I believe if there's enough support to approach it from that standpoint, if we can somehow manage to put the politics of the issue aside, this is good policy.
The politics of the issue is definitely going to come up. It is Illinois, after all, a very political state. And I asked him, but how is he still going to get over the Trump factor in this, right? I mean, this was originally brought forward by President Donald Trump. He says he was out, at a dinner, and the server suggested no taxes on tips, and he thought it was a great idea, so he just threw it out there, and Kamala Harris ultimately conformed to that as well with her campaign. But Trump won and got the policy implemented on the federal level. So how can you disassociate that policy from Trump in a Democrat state like Illinois, with a Democrat looking to get other of his caucus to sign up for this no tax on tips? How do you get over that Trump factor?
Well, because for Democrats who would never consider supporting this because this was a President Trump supported initiative, I would just say that former Vice President Kamala Harris campaigned on it and supported it as well.
Now, something else to consider here is not just the Trump factor and how that might play into whether or not Democrats in Illinois are going to take this up. There's others who come from a more free market perspective that raise the question of, well, listen, a server that makes $45,000 a year, that includes tips, and a secretary that makes $45,000 a year, not tips. It's the same type of that's the same income coming in, but the server is going to pay less in taxes than the secretary, because the secretary doesn't make tips, the server does. So is that fair? Should there instead be some other policy implemented? Maybe, I don't know, lowering the income tax rate for Illinoisans in general, or how do you exactly do that? DeLuca said that he wasn't ready to have that conversation yet about equality in income tax for just the amount of income, not necessarily how that income was derived.
I would answer that that's probably step two in dealing with this entire proposal. Step one is passing this bill or passing a version of this bill. I think dealing with those type of hypotheticals could come at a later date, but I don't think they have to be part of this discussion.
DeLuca also answering the question again, and as far as no overtime, tax on tips for Illinois, and he says it's just really to conform with what's on the federal books right now.
Well, like I said, this was the federal policy, so Illinois has a decision to make whether we want to participate in that federal policy. It's a popular one. It helps with these servers and their affordability issues. We could look at these other comparisons as well. I'm not opposed to that, but this is specific to this issue.
So the no tax on tips, we're going to see that advance at the Illinois Statehouse. The Illinois Senate is in to start spring legislative session this week. The Illinois House comes back next week. Is that going to be top of mind? When they do come back, is investigating fraud going to be top of mind? DeLuca says he's very focused on taxpayer protection.
Well, my highest priority, and I think it's a priority for a lot of folks, but it's been one of mine for years, even though it's come to the forefront now even more than ever, is property tax reform. And, it's really hitting people hard, and it has to be dealt with. The underlying structure of how we deal with property taxes and the formula for property taxes has to be reformed. We can't just throw more money at the same problem in the same setup and the same system, because we will be right back where we are today in 10 years if all we do is send more money towards the system. We have to reform it.
Again, State Representative Anthony DeLuca, some of the conversation I had with him yesterday, talking about the no tax on tip policy he proposed at the Illinois Statehouse, but also talking about just taxpayer protections and looking to address property taxes this spring session. But I also asked him about the heightened sense of fraud investigations that are happening in Minnesota, in particular for welfare fraud. But what about Illinois? I asked him, I said, we get financial reports that come in late. We don't know how our money was spent last year. We know that audits from 2.5 years ago show that there are adverse opinions and qualified opinions that are essentially negative, saying that you can't really track where the money's going for some of these federal taxpayer-funded programs that the state of Illinois handles, from child care assistance to temporary assistance for needy families, SNAP, unemployment. We know about all the fraud in the unemployment program from during COVID. It was billions of dollars. So you've got, the state's handling of federal taxpayer funds. We don't know what the opinions of the auditors are for 2.5 years, and they're adverse and qualified opinions. DeLuca says it's a serious concern.
Well, no one should be opposed, regardless of your political persuasion. No one should be opposed to making sure that our tax dollars are being spent efficiently and effectively. And that if there's any duplication, if there's any fraud, that we should do everything we can to weed it out. So I think we should be looking at it. We should make sure that every dollar is spent in those ways. And where we find where there's problem areas, we have to address it, because we spend a lot of money here in the state of Illinois. People are taxed a lot here in the state of Illinois. And, we have to respond to these pressing issues such as property tax reform. And the decisions that have to be made to reform the property tax system, none of them are easy. None of those are easy choices or decisions that would have to be made. But just increasing taxes to send more money and not reforming the property tax system for property tax relief, it has to be a combination of both, in my opinion. Reform and possibly raising revenue. It has to be a combination of both.
We'll see exactly where this conversation goes with the no taxes on tips and the property taxes and fraud and so on. All of it, of course, we'll keep an eye on it for you here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Go to thecentersquare.com, get the newsletter today. It's right here with the Center Square.